Hello and welcome to our live stream. I'm Juliana Ackerbloom, social media and content specialist at Plex Systems. Today we're going to discuss all things state of smart manufacturing and what you could expect to learn at the upcoming ROKLive event. First, I want to thank all of you for joining us. And before we get started, I have a question for our viewers. We know it takes a whole team to implement smart manufacturing. So can you tell us what your role is in the comments? Now, here with me today is Jerry Abbey, Product Marketing Manager at Plex Systems, and Chris Dornan, Marketing Manager at Rockwell Automation. Thank you both for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so ROKLive will include everything you remember from the Rockwell Automation Tech Ed event and the Plex Systems PowerPlex event, plus a whole lot more. And together, this event will highlight the power and expertise of our innovations and solutions and showcase how you can achieve greater results. This is an experience you won't want to miss. So join us in Orlando. Now, here with me today is Plex's Jerry Abbey. Thanks again for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So what is the State of Smart Manufacturing report and what can attendees expect to learn from your sessions?
The State of Smart Manufacturing report is a thought leadership piece that Plex has been producing for almost a decade. It's evolved over time. What started out as a smaller report, only surveying Plex customers, has evolved into a very global report run by a third-party, unbiased research firm. This year's report collected responses from 321 global manufacturers and is the most comprehensive we've ever done in terms of getting feedback across the globe. And we found that it really tied together similar responses that we've seen in the past, but in a very evolved way for this year. Some of the key findings that we found connected with the past years in terms of the critical challenges. So supply chain, everybody is having an issue with supply chain. The shortage of skilled labor, everybody is having an issue with the workforce. And risk mitigation, especially cybersecurity, and that's really come on in the last year, the last couple of years, but more so the last year. And in my session, I'm going to break down these findings, talk through them at length, and tie in how leading manufacturers are using technology to solve for these issues, not just now, not just tomorrow, but to really set their business up for success in the future going forward.
Wow, there's so much attendees have to learn from in your sessions. And I saw that you're presenting on ESG in manufacturing. Can you talk a bit about what ESG is and how it relates to our audience?
Sure. Yeah. To start out, what is ESG? It's environmental, social, and governance. And typically, when you're thinking about governance, it's that corporate governance piece. And we're finding this to be more and more a topic of discussion within manufacturing. And there's great reason for it. And I'm going to be candid here. This is my favorite part of the report. I love talking about purpose in what we do and in manufacturing. You're already doing so much of this, whether you have a formal or informal policy or no policy at all in place. Manufacturers are always looking for efficiencies, always looking for improving the manufacturing environment. And if you're doing that, you're doing components of ESG. And whether that's environmental, because you're focused on utilities, using less water, using less energy, or if you're focused on creating an environment that's conscious of connecting your employees and really developing a good positive culture, or connecting with your community. And then in the governance piece, that's really focused on how you face regulations. So if you are a regulated industry, like many manufacturers are, the ESG component ties into those regulations and how you're meeting them, how you're finding transparency in what you're doing, and your corporate governance, your accounting methods, and all of that ties into your brand, how you're representing yourself in the public space with your employees, your community, and regulators. And in my session, I'll be joined by Ali Shortner of Rockwell, and we'll be going back and forth talking about that pragmatic approach to ESG. We're not going to be talking high level of this doing good and having negative business consequences. We're going to be tying in the real consequences that come with implementing this policy and how it gives you a competitive edge in today's environment.
That sounds great. It's always best for manufacturers to be prepared for the future. So this will be really valuable for our attendees. Now, can you tell us a little more about the derivative reports of the State of Smart Manufacturing report, and like what we'll see at ROKLive with that?
Absolutely. So this year, again, as I said earlier, we touched on so many topics with the global research that was done that we were able to break it out into multiple reports. This ESG report that I just mentioned and the main report. And beyond that, we have a couple industry reports, so automotive, food and beverage, and supply chain. And we also have a cybersecurity and automation in addition to the ESG in terms of thought leadership. And there's a wealth of insights in here, and we have them hyper focused in those derivative reports so that anyone can go in and quickly glean insights into how they could implement what they find in this report into their manufacturing environment and just the day to day. And in terms of where else you'll see these reports, I think they'll be scattered throughout the presentations at ROKLive, and I'll be doing two others specific to food and beverage. Food for thought, trends and best practices, and food and beverage manufacturers drive operational excellence through digital transformation. And while these titles might sound a little lofty, again, really going after that pragmatic, useful approach, talking about ways that you can use this information now. Otherwise, how are you going to use the information? So we really want it to be as useful as possible to everyone.
That's great. There's so much valuable content and insights that we have to look forward to during your session. So thanks for chatting, Jerry.
Thank you.
Now, if you're just joining us, welcome. We just heard from Jerry about the recent State of Smart Manufacturing report and what his sessions will entail at ROKLive. Thanks to everyone who's jumped into the comments. And now tell us what you're doing to make sure your smart manufacturing system stays current rather than waiting for something to fail. All right, so switching gears a little bit to modernization of systems to increase efficiencies in the future. Here with me to share some insights is Rockwell Automation's Chris Doran.
Hi, Juliana. Thanks for having me again.
Happy that you're here. Now, your ROKLive session touches on refreshing hardware assets with a higher return on investment. Can you tell us a little bit about that approach?
Sure. A lot of ways you can call this. Sometimes it's modernization. We usually use that instead of migration, right? Because we want to attach some value to refreshing those assets. I think a mistake we make a lot of times is these projects are very difficult and it takes a lot of planning. And historically, how we've gone to market in this is focusing on particular products, looking at how we acknowledge end of life of products, and not really entertain the whole system when you look at what it takes to have a modern system where you can share information and be more efficient. So, my session is going to look at that a little bit, and it's even going to force us to look at this in a way where typically, we show what nirvana looks like and what a modern solution can employ in terms of having an operator have more control and better information and make better decisions. And that's all possible, but we really have to understand what are the attitudes behind the scenes at each customer facility. And you asked the right question. A lot of people are not going to look at that. And a lot of times, we turn our message on a deaf ears because historically control systems have been a set it and forget it. I only want to invest time and money into it when I have to, when it fails. So we really want to have that open discussion to say, how do we move people off of that platform, that way of thinking? So we need to do a few things, and we're happy that in this session we're going to talk about just really asking the right question. What are you looking to do? Is it that your system needs to just stay current and not fail for a certain amount of years? And that's a lot of times a different conversation than, are you tasked with increasing efficiencies and so forth like that. But we have to really realize what our customers' their current situation is and go from there. And it's a lot of things that Jerry talked about. It's not only the systems themselves, the technology could become obsolete. And unfortunately, as you look at Moore's Law and other things where technology is just growing at such a fast pace, you used to be able to say control systems would give you 15, 30 years to 30 years of life. Now that's cut in half. So all of those forces, along with the retirement, what pandemics have done to really force a change in how operators access the system, this is the time to talk about making sure that your system can respond to today's challenges. We need to have people have that access to the system, use information appropriately. But again, to Jerry's point, how is that information passing secured? Are you doing what's necessary in cybersecurity and safety to allow that to happen? But at the end of the day, we really want to employ to all of those customers that there is a better way. And at the end of the day, why don't you use Rockwell not only to get you there, but provide that system that will make you ready going forward?
Right. Wow. How interesting. Now, when customers have legacy systems or hardware, how can they build a modernization strategy?
It's a great question, Juliana, because I think one time, or I would say historically, when we show of what this next generation system will be, people will say, well, I want to buy it. How do I buy it? And that's really where we have to provide assistance as a valued consultant and sometimes the turnkey provider of a complete modernization. And that is a lot of different ways scalable for us. We have to actually create a recipe of sorts. Now, everybody's journey is going to be different, but I do think there is a repeatable set of steps that we either provide tools to the user, such as wizards or online tools that can capture information. But really, what we want to look at is always starting with assessment. And whether that's done by the customers at their own plants or if it's Rockwell, that a lot of times we'll just even be able to provide a service of assessing the current situation, not only of the assets in the system, but of the workforce. And that is something we want to do to be able to provide the right path forward to what needs to be done. If it can be done on a shutdown, if it has to be done 24/7 while things are running. I mean, there's just so many things that come into it. And even though we do provide a lot of tools to allow a user that's confident and comfortable to do a lot of that work themselves, I really think and would stress that at Rockwell Automation, we've done a lot of this, and our delivery teams have done thousands of these types of modernization efforts, Juliana.
Wow. Wow. Thousands. Our customers are clearly in the right hands then. So, what about case studies? Will you be previewing some hardware solutions and controllers that attendees can leverage?
We will. Now, some of these are not only ones that we've experienced, but based on even this whole idea of how a modernization is looked at. And I'll explain myself a little bit here. When you just look at maybe a product that's coming to an end of life and you get some kind of notice or letter that I have to change that product, a lot of times, it's not just that product that can be changed. If it's a network that is no longer supported by a certain product, it's not just looking at product to product replacement. It's really having an idea of the entire system. So what we're going to be doing in this session is playing some almost good cop, bad cop, is saying, hey, if you make this decision without asking, if you want to change to the latest controller, perhaps, but you're still using a legacy network, you may not be able to make that jump to the latest and greatest without having your network being looked at or perhaps modified. So we really want to provide some case studies and some examples to force people to look at this holistically and force our customers to think about that when they move forward.
Wow. How
So
exciting.
yeah,
That's great.
absolutely. And a lot of those studies will look at explicit products. I mean, the great thing about Rockwell Automation is we have a history of serving customers. I mean, some of our products realistically have been probably installed 30, 40 years ago, and we still support them. So we're going to still look at some of the tools and utilities for some of our legacy products, and we're going to really look at some of those tool sets and capabilities that, so when somebody leaves our session, our hope is saying, hey, I can do this, and it's not going to be that unattainable task that it sounds great to have, but it sounds like it's going to cost a fortune and it's going to take me 10 years to do it. We want to help. We want to help.
Wow. So much to look forward to. This is going to be a great session and I'm excited. So thanks for chatting, Chris.
Absolutely.
Now, looking at the comments, there's clearly a lot of excitement around the state of smart manufacturing and ROKLive. So don't forget to register to save your spot in these great conversations. And I want to thank all of you for watching today's live stream and sharing your thoughts in the comments. And a big thank you to Jerry and Chris for a great conversation. Once again, this is Juliana Ackerbloom, and I'll see you at ROKLive.